This one's a super good.
Slow it down a little bit. You can just let that dangle in your face, dude. I'm sure you're used to it.
I was waiting on it. As soon as I grabbed a hold of it, I was waiting on it.
Yeah, those feet out straight floor presses are fucker, man. I did 365 for 8, and it was not fun.
Try to squeeze everything to
Squeeze your glutes, and that'll help.
those butt cheeks.
Good. Pause it on the ground. There you go. That's what makes the floor press a bitch, is taking your elbows and stopping. That's it. Now you got it. What's up, guys? What's going on?
That makes it suck more. I like it.
I'm not walking anywhere, unfortunately. I'd like to be doing this outside, but the treadmill is really good for holding the phone. What are you doing, Daniel? I'm heading over to Toronto after getting done working today. You ever do direct hip flexor work? Yeah, absolutely. So if you come onto the apps right now, the top tier Patreon for sure, we're doing a lot of hanging leg raises right now for hip flexors. Hip flexors, in my opinion, are one of the most underutilized training muscles that are trained, and can cause all kinds of problems, all the way from back issues to knee issues, all kinds of stuff. So we do a lot of direct hip flexor work. So CJ, I would definitely recommend hopping on the top tier Patreon workouts. We actually just did hip flexor work Tuesday, so 2 days ago. So yeah, we do a lot of flexors. Been another real fun week at work, but at least the kids are back in school. Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's got to be a break, man. It was fun to have them at the house, but I would fucking drive me out of fucking control. It's to do that every day would be brutal for sure. What's up, MJ? So yeah, I'm sure that quietness helps with work for sure. I actually test drove the 12 valve Cummins. It actually went on the road yesterday for just maybe a quarter mile. We're working out all the little bugs. We got a little bit really high oil pressure right now. We got to get an oil pressure reducer in line, because the mechanical, the system that we have is developed for a dry sump, and we're running a wet sump oil pan. And so we have to run some type of a oil pressure reducer in line before it goes to the oil pressure adjustment. So when we started, it's running about 100 pounds of oil pressure. When it warms up, it gets up to down to 50 psi, but anytime you touch the throttle, it's back up to 100. And really, we should be at around 20 psi at idle, and maybe 50 psi, 60 at full bore go. So the company that we ordered that stuff off of makes an inline reducer. Peterson was the name of the company. So we got to put that in line, and that'll get the oil pressure down, and then we can actually go and bang on it on the street and see how it reacts. But dude, it's got a ton of body sway. I only got a rear sway bar. I don't have a front one yet. We might have to end up. Did you fail?
I did. 7.
So what we're going to do is get the oil pressure straightened out, and then we can actually drive it on the road. I don't have the overdrive hooked up yet, so I can only use the 3 gears. What's going on, David Perez? How you doing? Yeah, that's way better. That's what you want to do, especially when we're not in a peak season. Slow that down and build a little bit of muscle mass. Think make like 2-2. I don't blast through anything on like the off seasons. You know what I mean? Can't wait to see the thing up close. Yeah, it is rowdy. And you know, the problem is I've got that 12 valve jacked up about as far as you can take it. And if it's not enough power, which sounds crazy, but on 40-inch tires, those soak up a lot of juice. I'll have to go to a common rail motor. And D&J makes one. It's like a stage 2 that'll withstand 2,500 horsepower, but it's like 30 grand for the fucking block, so it's brutal. What's going on, Zach? Zach Fuckerberg. That's a solid 9. 1 out of 10. What do you guys think, Zach Fuckerberg, on a name for a YouTube name?
I like it.
Like 8?
I give that an 8.
8? The fire guys say 8. Well, David Perez, like I said, hop on our online coaching. Come on Patreon. Look at the library stuff that I post on Patreon. You know, that would be your best bet on that. Stone Cold Steve Austin, yeah, we still do his online coaching. Kay told me to tell you what up, Uncle Matt. Tell her what's up. Tell her it was fun to have her there. And say that she was, I had fun taking her to the zoo. Want to hear some cheese jokes? Not really. The fire guys do, though. They call me the big cheese because I do whatever. That's pretty bad, Cody. But yeah, hip flexors for sure are a huge factor in your guys' training. A lot of times when I see somebody with lower back issues, I always kind of have a look at small strength tests on hip flexors, and it usually never fails. Most people that have back issues have tight and weak hip flexors. Just spitting facts. So if you guys have been following the YouTube lives, you're going to see speed work, and I wanted to kind of talk about it a little bit today because I'm sure all those guys are not on this live. And it's interesting because when I post stuff that normal people don't study, it can look really awkward or really strange, or people don't understand why. You got to remember that training, strength training especially, is not always about hypertrophy and bodybuilding. Most people don't understand force velocity curve. They don't understand that power has to be specific. And so we were doing triples yesterday on speed work. And people are like, well, why aren't you doing sets of 10? Or why aren't you, they don't understand that we're working on rate of force development. And that takes a certain percentage and a certain amount of reps. You guys don't see Usain Bolt, right? Like the best runner, the best sprinter ever. You don't see him running a mile to train the 100-meter dash, right? And that's where people screw up, right? Is like, with running, it makes sense. You don't take a sprinter and make them do distance work, and you don't have a distance person work like 20-meter dashes. That it's not relative to what they do energy system-wise. Lifting is very similar. If you want to be strong, and you want to be real strong for a 1-rep max, doing things all the time for higher repetition ranges is not always conducive for building that. Now, it doesn't say that we don't do stuff like that for warm-ups, potentiation, post-activation work. We don't do that stuff till failure for accessories. But for main lifts, you want to really focus on making sure that your main goal is being consistently pushed at all times. And that doesn't necessarily mean going heavy, right? You can't train a 1RM all the time. You're going to have to use different ways to attack 1-rep max strength. One way to do that is to match the exact same time parameter of your sets. So if we're using a lighter weight for maximum velocity and we're keeping the reps at 3, right, then that means we're mastering how long it takes to do a 1RM. So that's something you guys want to do, right? So speed work is very, very important, and it's even important for fast twitch fiber. So, and I've done a video on this. If you go back, Mike Israetel did a video and probably accidentally put my speed training in there and used it for context of not using fast eccentrics. Well, if you do a lot of reading and research, you'll realize that fast eccentrics have a huge proponent to type 2 muscle fiber hypertrophy. So what you need to do is, even if your major goal is aesthetics, You may not do it very often, but you should make sure that speed work is a part of your training, because it's the first thing you lose as you get older. And if you're maintaining speed work, your body's ability to fire type 2 fibers and be explosive stays relative. It stays on your body. I'm a huge believer now at 46 years old that you only retain what you train, right? So if you're moving slow and you're moving controlled all the time, your quickness is going to dissipate. You need to have some things in your lifting that are explosive. And so we devised 2 days for the neurological system to devise explosive power. And that's where the speed work gets really confusing for normal people, because most people only have a bodybuilding mindset and they don't understand doing speed work even to this day. You know, there are 3 major methods to training, and 2 of them are heavily ignored in the Western world. Which, you know, even no matter how many articles I write, or how many articles Louis Simmons wrote, or how many times Dr. Fred Hatfield talked about it, people just don't absorb it. And the thing of it is you have the maximal effort method, you have the repetition effort method, and you have the dynamic effort method. Those are the only 3 ways that you can use weights. Now, those 3 ways have multiple ways of utilizing them, but the point is do you use sub-maximal weights at maximum intent or maximum velocity? For the answer for most people in the gym is absolutely not. And you can see it. You know, the first time I was introduced to speed work was about 1999. I was 19 years old. I was at Louis' gym, where I live now in Columbus, Ohio, and I saw George Halbert bench pressing 365 for speed work at 198 body weight. And it was so fast that the weights were almost coming off the bar. And that's when I realized there was something to that, because and about a month later when I had come back, he had done a raw bench, and it was 635 at 200 pounds, and he only weighed 200 pounds, doing 635 pound bench. He was the most explosive bench presser I'd ever seen. And he started talking to me about rate of force development, utilizing bands and chains, et cetera, et cetera. But what I started to realize is that I wasn't training anything that was speed oriented. You know, I had the same mindset that most people have. My mindset might have been a little bit more advanced at 19 than most people, but I was always learning. And what I find today on YouTube channels and educational things, people don't understand something, they automatically just talk shit about it. They're not trying to dissolve it or find it. What I find interesting is that people on YouTube channels will see their max on the bar being done for speed, and they will still be negative about it. They don't understand. And you know, for me, I was always enamored by somebody that was better than me at something. Somebody that might have known something more than I knew. And what it did was it made me want to learn more and want to push harder and want to figure out what was that one little piece that I was missing. Plyo push-ups, in my opinion, are not as good because, one, you can't be in a real good position for bench pressing in a push-up position because of the angle, right? 2, for most people, for maximum explosiveness, it's too heavy unless you're a lighter lifter, especially in the beginner and intermediate phases. 3, it's difficult to utilize accommodative resistance and change the force velocity curve. So what you need to be able to do is, I always tell people, get better at bench pressing before you start using a bunch of push-ups unless you want shoulder issues. So you need to be thinking about that. Yeah, it's not, speed work is not always 8 sets of 3. It's a rotational phase. So what you need to look is total volume at the end of the session. So we use waves of volume. The triples are correct. Depending on what part of the season you're in, depends on how fast the eccentric is. So sometimes we use fast eccentrics, sometimes we use tempo eccentrics, sometimes we pause because static overcome by dynamics is the most beneficial way to build strength, you have to rotate that stuff quite a bit. And your body will recognize the stimulus, in my opinion, within about 20 days. So that means you have less than 3 weeks before you have to switch something, or the body will accommodate, and therefore what you're doing will create less and less progression. And that's where variety comes into play. And this was all figured out 50, 60 years ago by a guy named A.S. Medvedev that trained a group of the best Olympic lifters that were ever assembled. And when they got done with their testing and competing, they realized that they needed 100 exercises for the clean and jerk and the snatch to be rotated in order to sustain progression, meaning that if they used the exact same exercises over and over again, the guys were getting beat up, getting injured, getting overuse injuries. So what they did was they created this rotational system that allowed them to focus on weak points and utilize exercises as an assessment tool developing. So, yeah, you got to watch. I mean, again, Joe DeFranco and I are great friends, and I think the West Side for skinny bastard stuff is okay. But you got to remember, they're trying to market that for people that don't want to invest in their equipment. I always look at strength training like building a car. If you want to build a really cool race car, you need paint guns, you need air tools, you need welders, you need sheet metal tools, you need wrenches, you need sockets, you need screwdrivers, you need a bunch of shit. And the problem is with strength training is that everybody is trying to condense it down to their own little, well, I only have a straight bar and 3 dumbbells and, 1 TheraBand. Well, you're only going to get so good doing that unless you're a genetic freak. And even then, the guys that tend to use very basic training modalities, they tend to get out of lifting very quickly, meaning they don't last very long. What I look for in Patreon members and online coaches are lifelong drivers, right? If I got a guy that'll put 10 years into training, I can guarantee you he'll be stronger than any method that's supposedly better, and they only last for 1 year. And so what you have to do is remember that most of us, and I'm included, is that everybody hits a plateau, right? You get to a point where the strength that just doesn't come anymore. It's like small little steps. It's not these big 20, 50 pound leaps that you used to get when you were a beginner, which makes it frustrating. And a lot of that's because you're not answering the questions that your body's trying to find answers for. Meaning that the same exercises over and over again, law of accommodation. We follow inherent biological laws, right? Law of accommodation, law of specificity. Law of accommodation states that if you do the same thing over and over again, eventually the body won't create a new stimulus and won't create any more progress. You also have law of specificity, which is the double-edged sword that tells you that if you don't do something semi-specific to what you're trying to do, you're probably not going to see a good result, i.e. speed work. Back to the speed work thing. Why are we doing triples? We're doing triples because if you measure the time in which it takes to do a triple, it's the time in which it takes to do a 1 rep max, right? If you're 175 and 5'11", a really good bench is probably 350. 350 pounds, 380 pounds, something like that would be really good.
Pass the hot dogs in the Mountain Dew on the back. Love me some Cletus.
New to working out, big fan. Yeah, variety is huge.
When he hears, hell yeah, bro, he goes running. That kid loves everything race cars. He's like, yeah. When they're stripped, he'll run up.
Yeah, a good bench for somebody who weighs 175 is around 350, in my opinion. And I think anybody that weighs 175 can attain that if they're willing to work long enough and smart enough.
I want to do that. The thing is, he doesn't want to wear it.
No problem, Cody. Like I said, if you want to go on the top tier Patreon, follow the workouts that we're doing, that'd probably be your best bet. We got a couple guys in the gym that weigh around 180 that are, I would say, intermediate lifters that are benching like 330 to 340 right now, so they're close. And it took a couple years to get them up to that point, but what I want to reiterate is that the ones we got up that strong have no shoulder problems, no wrist problems, no elbow problems. So again, you want to find a system of training that allows you to progress without increasing injuries or wear and tear. And that's a big issue. So yeah, if you tore a tendon, your variety of training, you're going to have to find ways of bench pressing and doing exercises that don't agitate that. That's what we follow with on online coaching, is doing an assessment, figuring out, like Cody, we'd have you fly into the gym and I'd do a physical assessment on you, see what we can find exercise library-wise that don't affect that tendon in your wrist, and then we design a workout based on the information that we find. That's the optimal way. I got a guy doing that next weekend when I come back from Toronto. He's flying in from Canada, and we're gonna basically do a full write-up with bioprint and everything. Now, kind of with you guys that are watching and listening, do not miss out. If you're in the Toronto area, we still have a couple of spots open for the seminar. So if you are not doing anything this Saturday, we're doing a seminar 10 to 3 where I'm going to spot some weaknesses and give you some feedback. You can also do one-on-ones or train with me. I'm going to train before the seminar on Saturday and then about 9 o'clock on Sunday. I'm only letting 5 people come in and work out with me. Hey Matt, is there a threshold speed you should reach for speed work? Sometimes I feel like I'm not going fast enough. Yeah, you want to get an accelerometer. I can usually see it by watching the bar speed. Most people don't have a coaching eye on that. You want to get what's called a Tendo unit and then measure it. What I like to do is week 1, which is the lightest week with the highest volume, we do somewhere around 1.0 to 1.1 meters per second. Week 2, intermediate weights, intermediate volume, we try to keep it around 0.9, 0.85. Week 3, highest intensity, lowest volume, we try to keep it around 0.7, 0.75. And we measured that multiple times. So we don't really measure it much anymore because I know what it looks like. And there is a big difference between moving something at 1.1 meters per second versus 0.75. But most people are not around speed work enough to see that. Yeah, I actually had a guy that's in Hawaii that came and did an internship with me for about a month. He trains a bunch of Marines out there. His name's Andrew. He came out from Hawaii. So it's possible. Get a hold of me on the website and we'll see what we can do. If I put what in the app, Alex? Nope. I don't really put the what's up in performance. Alex, I don't put those meters per second in the app because most people don't have access to measuring bar speed. What I've found over the last 15, 20 years is that the percentage usually matches the speed, especially if I'm sitting there yelling at you. Yeah, the speed numbers, in my opinion, for most people are a waste of energy as far as me typing that out, because unless you have an accelerometer, you're not going to be able to see that speed work. So again, that's a little bit more advanced for the apps, right? That's stuff that we use at the gym. And then I find out what the average is on the speed. So like Sarah's beginning at the gym, right? She doesn't have the same speed as, in the same percentages as Rob and I do. So it's hard to put those numbers into perspective, because if you're a beginner intermediate lifter, you're not going to be able to fire at 1.1 meters per second. You're just not going to be able to, not with good technique. So I find that we save that information for people who are at the gym. What's up, Igor? You guys doing speed work?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's heavier.
Moving very fast.
No.
Super fast.
Just try to put as much juice as you can into it, you know? If we had a budget, I would get, like we were talking about here on the YouTube channel, is get an accelerometer so you can see how fast you're moving. Because for you guys, dialing in the exact amount of speed, I'm basing it on a theoretical percentage. But if you, let's say you had 5 runs last night, or you didn't sleep real good, that might be, you might need to take 10 pounds off the bar to match the speed. But, you know, the cheapest one I've seen is like $280, you know, to be able to actually measure what that bar speed is. So if it feels shitty and it feels way too hard, just lighten it up a little bit. It should still feel explosive.
When you're talking about that, so when you're theoretical 60%, what's your bar speed you're using?
60% should be about 0.85.
Okay.
70% should be about 0.7. 0.7 is not fast.
No.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's funny is if you're strong enough, if you hook a band onto it, the band will make you faster.
Is it because it keeps you?
Kinetic energy.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's pulling you down, so it makes your muscles, the tendons, store more energy. That's where the bands work out really well. But there's a refractory time, like a stagnation time, to transfer it over to free weight.
Okay.
That's why you guys are doing free weight speed work right now. It has a little bit more bearing to free weight 1 rep maxes, but due to law of accommodation, if you use straight weight all the time, there's a certain bar speed that over accelerates through the middle and the top. You'll create a sticking point using straight weight with speed work all the time. In the middle and the top. Because once you get it moving, 185 is not 185 anymore. Once it changes direction, it's lighter. Because now you have inertia on the bar. The bands and the chains reduce the inertia and make the muscles push through the entire. It's like trying to drive your car on the highway and applying the brakes. That engine's going to kick down and work way harder to maintain the same speed. And that's why bands and chains are important. Well, I think that's a pretty good live for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in. You guys had some really good questions. And like I said, all of the workouts on the top tier Patreon are at bare minimum. Come on the Conjugate Trainer Road and actually follow a system that develops hypertrophy, strength, and power all at the same time concurrently versus training in the dark and not understanding how to work out. You know, it's a huge value, and it also is going to keep your body getting beat up. I'm not a big fan of the leg presses. They create no stability. They create very little transfer over to straight bar squats. I've used them occasionally, but usually in off seasons only. So my opinion is stay away from leg presses. You're better off doing Bulgarian squats or something that's harder to stabilize if you're trying to develop, because if you have a left or right imbalance, which most people do, upwards of 12 to 15%, locking yourself into a leg press, you're just going to make the problem extend itself or even make it worse. Best lower back exercise. Well, it's tough because it depends. Again, Igor, it depends on who's standing there coaching you. My opinion, reverse hypers. But back extensions can work well if you're doing it the right way. But learning the motor control of how to take an exercise that might be, I hate to say it, but glute or hamstring dominant and make it lower back dominant, you can do that. People do it all the time with deadlifts. They don't know how to use their ass, so they use their lower back, right? Which is usually not a good idea. But the lower back has to be very calculated on how you train it, because it only likes so much compression movements, and only likes so much wear and tear. So you got to figure out a way to get everything strong without beating up your lower back. So I would say reverse hypers. But again, you're going to have to know how to do it right. I can do reverse hypers and it look the same way, and I can make it do my lower back, my glutes, or my hamstrings, depending on what I'm controlling up here. You know, I consider that kind of the Yoda of training, right? How do you make a bench press? With most people, it's a pec and a shoulder exercise. How do you make it a tricep exercise? Focusing on the triceps. So talk to you guys later. Thanks for the comments and helping me get this YouTube channel. We finally broke 115,000 subscribers. It's been a total train wreck to try to get the YouTube channel to grow, because I will not do flashy shit and I won't pay for stuff. But it is what it is. So talk to you guys later.